Hi everyone, Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping so you can get the most out of your tapping practice. I still have one spot left in my Core 16 program. Core 16 is where we are going to march through one at a time, one-on-one, the 16 most common issues I see with my clients. If you'd like some more information on the Core 16, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/core-16. That's tappingqa.com/core-16, and that is the numbers 16. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 349, originally aired February 6th, 2019. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we have a conversation about the brain and how the needs that we have in the subconscious, the unconscious, and the conscious mind impact the way that we tap. Oftentimes we are in a situation where we use the tool that is closest to us to go after the issue that is at hand. And the problem is, just because it's an emotional issue doesn't mean that we can approach it in the exact same way. You know, the old saying, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every single problem looks like a nail, meaning that you do the same thing over and over again. And I think it's really easy for us to fall into a rut with our tapping. And so today we're going to look at the difference between the needs of safety, of satisfaction, and social connection, and how tapping integrates into that. Before we do that, I just want to thank everyone who is a patron and has been supporting the Tapping Q&A podcast. As you saw back in January, we had a couple of bonus podcasts where we shared some extra content from some of our guests. We have a bunch more of that scheduled for this month. And every single month, we take a percentage of the money that comes in for those who support the podcast, and we lend it back out through Kiva, which is a microloan website that gives money and loans money to small business owners all over the world. This month's contribution went to Lucy. Lucy is a small business owner in Kenya. She buys fruits and vegetables wholesale and resells them to individuals to pay for the schooling of her children. So everybody who has been supporting the podcast, thank you very much as we get a chance to support her in her amazing work. If you would like to have the opportunity to support the podcast as well, get some great bonuses, get bonus podcasts every single month that are only available to supporters, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. That's tappingqa.com/support. So in reality, what we're going to talk about and how we can look at these different types of issues and which tools we're supposed to be using with them, we're going to do it in two parts. The first part today is a conversation with Dr. Rich Hanson. Rick is a New York Times bestselling author. You might know the book, The Buddha's Brain. The thing I find really fascinating about his work is the way that he looks at the emotional response we have in the moment, how that relates to our neural structures of our brain, and then what are the things that we can do to change our brain at a neurological level so that in the future, when we bump into these problems again, we have a different, healthier, more well-informed emotional response. Because tapping is a tool that is great to help us to alleviate the symptoms in the moment, but it's even better if we can eliminate the symptom in the moment and change our resources and change the way that we respond so that in the future we do that in a healthier way. So I said two parts. Part one, the conversation where we really run through the brain and how all of these parts work and how we identify what the real problem is this week. Next week, in episode 350, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it specifically through a tapping lens. Once we understand this, how do we then apply tapping to each one of these needs around safety, satisfaction, and social connection? So it's two parts, and don't just skip ahead to the tapping stuff because the stuff that we're going to talk about here is really super foundational, and it will give you an opportunity to have the groundwork so that when you're learning the tapping that we talk about next week, it's going to make more sense than just a tool that you use, but becomes something that is supple that you can adapt for the work that you want to do. So here is my conversation with Rick. In Resilient, you talk about basic needs, safety, satisfaction, and connection. I'm a huge stickler for understanding definitions because oftentimes we can get at cross purposes when you're using a word one way and I'm using it some way else. For you, just high level, what do those three words mean to you and how do they connect to each other?
Well, first, I want to say I'm happy to be here. And second, that I really agree with you about clarity of what do the words mean? It's okay if we're using them in different ways. Different people have different sort of jargons, but we ought to know what they mean. So you're right. The frame here is that if we are to be happy or if we are to be resilient in the service of happiness, at bottom, that's always about managing needs for us as humans as well as other non-human animals. It's all about adaptive function, managing your needs. So what are our needs? A commonly used model that I have kind of stripped down to its essence in biology and in psychology is that there are basically three fundamental needs. They're termed slightly differently in different settings, but they have to do first with our need for safety, which non-human animals and we manage through avoiding pain, death, loss, and so forth. Second, we have a need broadly for satisfaction, for experiencing pleasure, for achieving goals and attaining rewards, which we manage through approaching rewards. So we have avoiding pain, approaching pleasure so far. And then last, I think that we have a profound need for social connection. And so I think there about our broadly defined needs for relationships and healthy, happy relationships, our needs for connection, which we manage through attaching to others. So as an overarching framework, really simple, safety, satisfaction, connection, managed through avoiding, approaching, and attaching, loosely related in order to the reptilian brainstem, the mammalian subcortex, and the primate human neocortex. That's it in a framework. And then that helps you zero in as kind of a roadmap for yourself. All right, what would be most useful to grow inside myself these days? Whether using tapping, let's say, to do that, or through other methods. What's the resource that would be good to grow inside myself that can help me meet my needs or the needs of others?
And so just in your answer there's a very clear difference between you and I, me being a populist, you being a scientist. I would have said lizard, puppy, and human brain, but have gotten to the exact same spot in describing those things.
Yeah, that's right. I am fond of, our ancient little rat-like ancestors emerging 200 million years ago who came to rule the earth, frankly, as those dinosaurs went away. And I have this kind of really kind of cute, catchy, I think it's cute and catchy rubric or, basically we need to routinely as we go through the day, internalize experiences in which we are, quote unquote, petting the lizard, feeding the mouse, and hugging the monkey.
I love that. Wow, that's really great.
It's just a summary. Yeah. And take it and don't just experience it. You have to take it in. Yeah. You have to let it sink in to change your brain. So then you have the results with you wherever you go.
And so higher arching, one of the things that you and I talked about just before we started the interview here was the fact that I misspoke the name of the book and I called it Resilience. And you corrected me accurately that it's Resilient. And so for you, why is that distinction so important? Because I loved what you had to say when we were talking about that.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you. Well, in a way, the distinction is given in a subtitle, How to Grow an Unshakable Core of Calm, Strength, and Happiness. And that's the idea that resilience, if you think of it, it's kind of like a subject, plus there are a million books with the title Resilience. But if you really think about what you want to be resilient. You don't want to just understand resilience, as you said, in a scientific way, let's say. You want to be resilient as an end state. And so then the question becomes, how do you actually change yourself reliably in a lasting way? the dirty little secret in self-help, clinical psychology, mindfulness training, et cetera, is that most of the experiences we have or induce in our clients, our students, and so forth, do not have any lasting value. They do not produce any lasting change. That's the dirty little secret. The conversion rate is like a return on investment of maybe 1%. Ballpark. And so what interests me a lot is how to increase the conversion rate, the return on investment of the experiences we're having to some kind of lasting change inside ourselves, the development, therefore, of this unshakable core. And that's the movement broadly from state to trait. And I, as you know, use the tools of what's called positive neuroplasticity to turbocharge the growth process so that then people can use those universal tools, the universal how of self-help, to grow whatever good things they want to grow inside themselves these days. Greater skillfulness with their partner, greater know-how in running a meeting, greater happiness, greater freedom from their trauma, greater fundamental, profound peace of mind. And so it's great to know, the old line, how to fish, because when you know how to use the passing experiences of everyday life to change yourself in lasting ways for the better, you have perhaps the most profound and useful inner skill of all, the one that you can use to grow the rest of them.
The thing I love so much about that is how results oriented you are. That it's not just about thinking about things in a certain way, and it's not just about doing something in this moment that makes me feel better in some particular capacity, but you're talking about this long-term transformation that allows us to act in different ways in the moment, because at any given moment, we are responding from that safety, that satisfaction, that connection place. And if we're not transforming who we are and how the functionality happens inside of the brain, then it's something that is fleeting, and it doesn't feel like it's a good investment of our time as we kind of step into that sort of stuff.
You nailed it. Can I tell you 2 quick personal stories?
Please. I would love that.
Okay. First quick personal story is I've done a lot of rock climbing, especially when I was younger. And I've been in many situations in which there were definite challenges to safety. I could fall off. I was holding on to a little edge the width of half a pencil, and the wind was whistling, and I was 10 or 20 feet above my protections, which meant I would fall twice the distance, 20 or 40 feet. And yet I was happy. I was calm inside. I felt capable, and I was having the time of my life. So just because a need is challenged for safety or satisfaction or connection doesn't necessarily mean we need to move into what I call the red zone of fight, flight, freeze, responding with a lot of stress and a lot of wear and tear on our body, our mind, and our relationships. It's through building up an unshakable core of resources inside that we're able to stay in the green zone rather than going red as we deal with our challenges. And so to me, that's what's so useful to focus on here. As we grow resources, then we're more capable. And also we can meet challenges with this inner core of kind of calm well-being, no matter what the world is doing around us. So that's my first story about rock climbing. And then my second one, which goes to what you said here, I was a miserable kid. I had a really difficult childhood, not as challenging as I think many people have. I'd give it a C- maybe overall. But I was very unhappy and kind of screwed up and neurotic, in my teen years. And I had this revelation of sorts when I was about 15. And I located it because I was reading the book Dune at the time, and the main character was 15 when the book starts. And it's kind of related to what that book is about, the science fiction classic Dune. And the revelation for me was that I realized that no matter how miserable I was and no matter how bad the past was, every day I could focus on learning a little thing, becoming more skillful in some little way, shifting myself inside so in terms of my mood or my values or how I related to life in general. And therefore, every day it was within my power to learn a little, heal a little, grow a little, transform a little. And that clarity was incredible for me. It made me so happy. The past was the past. The present had already congealed into reality, but the future was the undiscovered country. in the saying. And it was on me to learn and grow as much as I could. No one could stop me from doing it, but no one could do it for me. And then on the heels of that was the realization that if learning and growing was incredibly important to do every day, then learning how to learn, learning how to help myself, harvest the most out of every single day, every single interaction, every single breath, was profoundly, incredibly important to learn. And so those are my two stories that kind of frame what we're talking about here.
And thank you for sharing those. I think one of the things that I grew up in Wyoming. I rock climb. I would not consider myself a rock climber. I grew up next door to rock climbers. My next door neighbors were part of the first 4 guys to free climb K2, like real hardcore stuff. So I was around that. And the thing I find interesting in that story is, as you described yourself being in a circumstance there was peril, you were outside of the normal comfort zone of what your safety was, and your mind frame was that it was great. And what that leads me to recognize is that it wasn't about the danger that you may or may not have been in that moment, but instead what you were perceiving was the actual level of danger. And
that's part of it. But I also had skills that I developed inside. I had a big background in kind of self-calming. And I also had, I would say, a kind of development of a core of grit. So all those, I just want to name all those as the kinds of resources that people can grow. Yeah. So keep going.
And that's it. And I think part of our ability to have a proportionate, well-informed emotional response is 1, how we're perceiving the circumstance that we're in, 2, how we perceive ourselves, and 3, what are the resources that we have the opportunity to draw on in that moment, and how those things kind of interact, create our emotional response, so that, as you were talking about either earlier, the difference between being in red and green, and it happens to all of us in every single moment, but particularly in a moment as treacherous as really high-level rock climbing, the fight, flight, or freeze not only has mental consequences in that moment, it has physical consequences for you as well, where all of a sudden your skills are reduced because your body is doing something really specific in responding to what's going on there.
Right. If I could generalize it further too, like I read your bio in different places, and I saw that you worked at Anderson Consulting.
Yes. Yep.
That's elite business consulting, management consulting. So I'm sure you were with people who, 2 different people, let's say, in the same situation, facing the same challenges, one person handling them while also feeling really worried about the results, preoccupied, irritable, snappish with other people, kind of pissed off and self-critical. Red zone. Other person handling the exact same situation in a similar environment, maybe working long hours, tired at the end of the day, a little worried about the result, but not invaded in his or her core by what they were dealing with outside themselves or the reactions that were arising inside themselves. They were able to stay green, even though the world was flashing red. And the key question then is, what did person B draw upon that person A didn't? And that's, I think, a really useful thing for people to think about, maybe listening right here. Imagine certain situations that you find challenging, tricky relationship, family. There's a joke in monasteries, think you're so enlightened, go home for the holidays. It's true. Yeah. Or just, pick your political poison. You're walking through an airport and you see that face on that TV network, pick your poison. And you're like, rrr. So whatever it might be, think about something that's challenging for you. Maybe you're dealing with a health issue that really is worrying you or upsetting you, or a financial problem. What if it were more present inside your mind? And I'm using the word mind very broadly, but way beyond intellect. What if it were more present in the resting state of relaxation, calm, and vitality in your body? What if it were different in your everyday mood? What if it were different in your overall outlook? Or what if it were different in the ways that you manage your own reactions, your own thoughts and feelings? in desires, in relationship to the world. Okay, what if it were different would really, really help? If you have a flat tire, putting gas in the tank, what if it were different there, is not going to help. It's not matched. But if you have a spare tire, then you're good to go. Flip it the other way. If the challenge is you're out of gas, all the tires in your trunk are not going to do it for you. That's why, for example, doing gratitude practices don't help with safety issues because they're not matched to it. Or similarly, if you're, let's say, dealing with a lot of obstructions to your goals and you're not able to experience satisfaction or achievement, if somebody says, hey, this will protect your home better, like it's an extra bolt on your front door, that's nice, but it's not matched to the category of the need that's being challenged. So that's a useful, really deep, useful question for people. The 4 questions actually I do routinely. What's the challenge? Second, what inner resource would really help? Third, how can you experience that inner resource or aspects of it? And then fourth, how can you install those experiences as a lasting change in yourself? I should add that I think that tapping and related methods, as well as other methods, are often really helpful in that installation phase of learning. That once you're experiencing something useful, which could include the alternative to what you don't want to experience or is problematic for you, then you can use these methods to really produce a lasting physical change in the nervous system so that then you have that resource with you wherever you go.
I love the way in your work you distinguish between these 3 areas, the safety, the satisfaction, the connection, and then talking about, like you said, matching the need to what is going on. In the resourcing, you talk about grit, you talk about gratitude, and you talk about confidence. Talk to me a little bit about, like, in your mind, again, let's define the terms, what those 3 things mean. And then the second piece of it is that question that you were just talking about, making sure that we're matching the right resource to the need that is at hand and how we're able to do that specifically. Because intellectually, I can say, I need to match the right resource to the right need, and I know how to do that. It's a completely different thing to do that in the moment when I'm confronting with that. So let's take a step back. First, kind of walk through those 3 resources, and then we can talk about how we figure out how to use what.
Yeah, Gene, you're 100% right. This is just the second question, first one is, where does it hurt, right? What's the challenge? Then second, what's the medicine? What would really help? That second question is the money question. And you're right, it's the one that's not always so clear. So that's why I developed this really thorough model, right, of how to identify the medicine you need most these days. Okay, so grit, gratitude, confidence. Those are nice. Those are really important inner resources, inner strengths. Grit is pretty targeted for safety. Gratitude is very relevant for satisfaction. And confidence, especially the bone deep feeling of self-worth, deep down inside yourself, is very relevant for connection because we first develop confidence a lot and self-worth generally a lot through relationships, not entirely, but a lot. And second, as we develop self-worth, we're more able to be vulnerable and be real and relax and kind of weather issues in our relationships. Okay, so what do I mean by grit? I think of grit, in a pretty conventional sense as, that which remains after everything else has been worn away. In other words, that fundamental just hardiness inside, moxie inside, determination inside. You could be knocked down 10 times, but you're going to get up 11. And again and again and again and again and again. And that's what I mean by grit. Second, gratitude, narrowly, it's thankfulness for what we've received, gifts we've received. I like getting a paycheck after I do a job, but I don't feel grateful for it because I earned it. Gratitude is really for gifts we've received, and implicit in gratitude, one of the benefits of it is a kind of humbleness, humility, and vulnerability that's receptive and recognizes that so much of what makes our lives has to do with things that we are dependent upon and could not possibly have earned, including a human brain and body. All right, gratitude. I blur gratitude sometimes more generally to things like gladness or happiness, but I think, as you say, it's useful to differentiate what these words mean, which then enables us to zero in on them very directly as experiences and know when we're experiencing them and know whether we're actually internalizing them. So we build up trait gratitude, not just do things to help ourselves have states of gratitude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like that difference. Yeah.
Yep. And then confidence, I use it both in the kind of ordinary sense as an expectation of success when you enter into something that's realistic, not arrogant or, overweening. On the other hand, or additionally, I should say, I use confidence as a placeholder word for feelings of self-worth and including feeling like a fundamentally good person or certainly a good enough person, which I think is almost taboo for many people to allow themselves to feel that deep down inside there's a goodness there, which for some people shades into something spiritual. So that's what I mean by those. And if you were to ask like how they would be used, so let's suppose that a person, I think of three major flashing lights that indicate challenges to safety, namely anxiety, anger, or feelings of immobilization or helplessness. And if you're helpless, that's a fundamental challenge to safety. If you're dead in the water and you don't know what to do, you're vulnerable to the next wave coming along. So anxiety, anger, and helplessness. And in addition to grit, other great inner resources for safety needs. And people might, as they listen, be thinking to themselves, hey, how am I doing in each of these, right? It's sort of like you go to the gym and the first time you're there, the trainer evaluates you, where are you strong? Where could you use a little help? I need to work on my abdominals. That's for sure, by the way, Gene. But anyway, so for example, another key resource besides grit for safety is can you relax your body at will? Can you calm down really rapidly? Rate of recovery from being disturbed from your resting state is a major indicator of physical and mental health, fast recovery rates. Mm-hmm. So, that's a resource. Another resource is, can you recognize protections about you? Another one is, as you said earlier, can you see threats accurately rather than overestimating them, as people tend to do? Another key resource for safety, I'll just finish on this one, is just the felt sense of determination, which goes also to grit. Okay?
Before we step into kind of the next one, I think the thing that you mentioned earlier in using tapping as a way of kind of doing installation and approaching these resources, I can see how easy it is to take one of these things and to be able to recognize whether or not it's something that is showing up. Which then gives me the opportunity to start dealing with the emotional response I have to failing in that circumstance, naming the place that I would like to be, and start tapping into those places. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes this really straightforward path. So I like those four lenses there that you use to kind of help us to see whether or not that's something that is present. Yeah,
that's great. Really great. Let's say satisfaction. So major indicators of challenges there. Frustration. Being obstructed, disappointment, not getting something you wanted or expected. Also a general sense of blah or ennui or meh, meh in your life. That's an indicator. So what are some of the major resources for satisfaction? Being able to form good plans. I routinely have therapy clients who really want something, whatever it might be, including a life partner, and they have no plan. I'm like, well, trust in God, but tie your camel, make a plan, take action. So that's a very useful resource. Another one is, can you let yourself feel pleasure, healthy pleasure, and really savor it, really internalize those experiences? Yeah. The lusciousness of a warm shower, you look out the window, you see something beautiful in your garden as I'm doing right now. Can you really, really take in that pleasure? As you internalize, by the way, these beneficial experiences, it reduces tendencies toward craving for them over time. It doesn't make you addicted to them. Actually, as you build up the internalized felt sense of rewards, for example, then you're less oriented to grasp for them outside yourself because more and more you have them inside you wherever you go.
As you say, it's interesting you say the importance of savoring. Years ago, I was visiting my buddy Jason Everett in San Diego, and we got some Chinese food, and we were sitting on Seal Beach and literally just sitting on the cliffs watching the seals in the water below. And Jason said grace before we ate our meal, and one of the lines he said stuck with me to this day. He said, "Be with those who will never know a meal this fine." And it wasn't simply recognizing we were blessed because we had food, but we were blessed because not only did we have food, we had really amazing food that we were getting a chance to experience in a different way beyond the basic sustaining of our bodies and giving us the energy that we needed, but naming specifically how special that was. And it's something that's always stuck with me, that being able to not only look at the fact that we have, but the type of experience and how valuable it is tuning in that way.
That's beautiful. Those are wonderful skills. And just I want to flag a distinction.
Yeah.
Those skills will help a person, including you in the example, to have beautiful experiences, really lovely nuances or textures in a key experience. That's great. And key question, is a person staying with those experiences for a breath or two or three so they have time to begin their process of transferring into lasting physical changes in the nervous system?
Yeah. Or
is a person really feeling them in their body so that they're more than just a nice idea? They're becoming very somatic and emotional. And also, is a person, for example, really recognizing and focusing on and letting themselves receive what's so luscious about the experience, what's so rewarding about it? Those three methods of extending the duration of an experience, embodying it, and highlighting what's rewarding about it are three major ways to increase what's called experience-dependent neuroplasticity, the actual conversion of passing experiences to lasting neural changes.
I have a friend of mine who, when we do things, like she will literally stop and she'll close her eyes and she takes this long, deep breath. And it's like, instead of just taking a picture of the moment, you can just see her literally stopping and taking this marvelous moment that we're in, and she's just imprinting it deeper on herself and just sits there and just savors it for a moment and then opens her eyes and then we move on to the next thing. But literally without apology, and just stops and just does exactly what you're saying. Not just experience it, but literally she's like trying to write it into herself so she doesn't let it go.
That's beautiful. Well, hey, one more for satisfaction that people can do along the way. When you accomplish things, especially the little things we accomplish over the course of a day, finishing a podcast interview, finishing an email, finishing a load of laundry, finally getting the kids to bed at night, as you move through your day and you accomplish many, many little things. In other words, you have a chance to experience success in lots and lots of little ways. Slow down for a breath to register. Okay, I got through that batch of emails. Okay, I finished the dishes. To really feel successful, because many, many people have internalized painful experiences of failure, and doing what I'm describing here helps to compensate for that. I should add, by the way, we haven't talked about this yet, which is the brain's negativity bias. Or as I put it, it's like Velcro for bad experiences, but Teflon for good ones. Yep. Yeah. So there are two big reasons to really, really take in the good, as your friend does, for example, to really, really help beneficial experiences, including some, frankly, that are painful, like healthy remorse or a moment of disenchantment or feeling really moved in your heart by the suffering of others. It may not be that pleasurable, but it's an important resource to grow inside yourself. That's okay. So that said, when you're, in general, it's really important to help these experiences sink in so that they leave lasting residues inside that are physical in your actual body, in your nervous system. Second, doing this practice of internalization and looking for opportunities to really grow durably the strengths inside you'd like to have more of. A major second reason for doing that is to compensate for the brain's negativity bias. That's continually, boom, fast tracking moments of irritation, stress, annoyance, or hurt, or worry, or sadness, fast tracking those into storage. Once burned, twice shy, right? But meanwhile, those useful experiences that fill most people's lives, most minutes of most days, flow on through like water through a sieve.
The example I use with my clients all the time is just talking about exactly this, is I talk about walking upstairs. So in New York City, I've been here 5.5 years. I live in a 6th-floor walk up. I walk up 78 stairs every single time I walk out my front door. That's how I get home. There are 3 times I have tripped while walking upstairs in New York City. Twice in my apartment, once in a coffee shop. And I remember those so specifically, those negative experiences. And I walk up the stairs all the time. And coming up the stairs, because I came home to do this interview, so I would be in my studio, not at my co-working space. I have zero recollection of walking up the stairs today, and it went successfully. And if I am evaluating me walking upstairs off of what I remember those 3 bad things, and it's really easy for me to believe that I'm bad at walking upstairs or walking upstairs is dangerous, because as you're saying, those things just pass through us as a sieve, and we never latch on to them because it was the expected outcome. Therefore, it was unremarkable, and we forget it. And so by naming and grabbing those things that were successful become really useful for us. And for our tappers out there, that's one that I tap on all the time when I am in a circumstance where I am struggling because I'm only remembering the things that go wrong, is I literally just say that out loud. I think about it just like walking up the stairs. I remember the bad. I do this really well. And just rebringing that to front of my mind using that analogy becomes a helpful way to, if I haven't remembered the good of the circumstance, to break the connection I have to that negative bias that you're talking about.
That's a fantastic example. Well, let me just finish off on connection, because that's a big domain for many people. So major indicators of issues in connection are hurt, or feeling devalued or inadequate. Another major indicator is resentment, grievances, grudges. As social mammals, social primates, we're profoundly vulnerable. It's wild to realize, Gene, I know you know this. A lot of people don't really know this. The natural social group for human beings is 50 people for your whole life. Most hunter-gatherer bands have about 50 people in them, and they live together most of their lives. A little bit of diffusion into their band and out of their band, but that's pretty much it. And most of those other bands are dangerous. So it's we're very vulnerable. We're very likely to cooperate with us, but fear, dehumanize, and aggress upon them. And one of the major ways that happens is the ways in which we're vulnerable to feelings of grievance or attack, and then moving into vengeance. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, you can see that being manipulated by authoritarian leaders throughout history, including, obviously in the world today. So, that sense of, you did me dirt, I'm going to pay you back. That's a major red light flashing on your inner dashboard that says, challenge to connection. Other challenges to connection are loneliness, or unfulfilled longings, for closeness or soulmates or a partner. So these are all challenges, different ways to help yourself in this area. Look for opportunities to feel good about yourself, both based on other people being friendly toward you or caring toward you, or just, compassionate or even loving toward you. Slow down and help yourself experience those moments and internalize them, take them into yourself, marinate in them, absorb them like a sponge. Let yourself really drink the water that you long for. Another thing is that when you feel caring and loving inside your own heart, really slow down. Register your own good heart, your own compassion, your own kindness, your own goodwill, your own commitment to social justice toward other people. Another great thing you can do, just to finish, also to build up resources for connection, is to become more skillful at what I call the strong heart. The intersection, the integration of both assertiveness and a healthy sense of entitlement for your own needs to be met and certainly listened to in important relationships, along with compassion and kindness and love for those other people.
And as I was reading through the book, and every single time I saw you use the word confidence, the way that I kind of translated that in my mind was comfortable inside of my own skin. Because I think sometimes it's really easy for us to mistake confidence for false confidence, or to substitute false confidence for confidence. And I found that when I'm comfortable inside of my own skin, I recognize what my skills are and what my limitations are. But I'm okay with that. And because I'm okay with that, it allows me to make connection with another human and that level of intimacy, because I recognize where I'm incomplete, but I can be honest with that and know that I'm trying to change that, but don't have to be ashamed of it. Where it's not this false bravado where I have to show up confidence that I have this all figured out and this is all no big deal.
Yeah.
And there's a subtle difference between confidence and false confidence on the surface, but the way we act and the way we're able to connect and we're able to really take care of that resourcing, those are radically different experiences for us as we navigate that.
That's beautifully, beautifully said. I mean, I know we're going to wrap up in a moment. I would just want to add one last thing, which is what's the implicit in this approach, which I call taking in the good. The fancy term for it is positive neuroplasticity. That's a mouthful. Implicit, baked into it, is the bonus benefit of many things. Fundamentally, taking a stand for your own well-being, treating yourself like you matter. That's really important for people. And that there, too, is a state of taking a stand for yourself or being on your own side that you can internalize increasingly as a trait of being for yourself. Also implicit in this practice, it draws your awareness into the many things that are good and useful and beautiful and doing just fine in the world. I think about the metaphor of the sky. You know, the sky is enormous. If there's a storm cloud up in it, that's what our attention goes to. But as Pema Chodron puts it, you are the sky. Everything else is just the weather passing on through.
Right.
And so, this practice really helps us look out into the world and see what's good about it. And the last baked-in benefit is that it emphasizes how you are a cause in your own life. Sure, there are many, many things you can't change. There are many, many forces kind of pushing you around. You can't do anything about them, let's say. But meanwhile, I'm with Captain Kirk, rejecting the Kobayashi Maru scenario. The no-win scenario. There's always something you can do. I'm with Viktor Frankl, founder of logotherapy. Even in the most horrible situations of all, we have an inner freedom, an inner space inside our inner temple in which we can choose how we will respond to our circumstances. And baked into the methods I'm describing is this fundamental quality of agency, or being at cause in your life, a hammer rather than a nail, which is itself a trait you can develop inside, the sense of being at cause in your own life, especially at a time when so many people feel so pushed around by large-scale macro forces.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time. This was a really awesome conversation.
Oh, it was a pleasure for me too as well, Gene. And you have a really neat background, and I wish you well with everything you're doing.
So that was a really comprehensive conversation. You can understand now why we've broken this up into two sections. If you would like more information about Rick and the really amazing work that he does, his free newsletter, the books that he has written, all you need to do is go to tappingpodcast.com. Once you go there, click on the link for episode 249. If you happen to be listening to this in the website right now, below the player, you can see all of those links. I have been working my way through the book Resilient, which we talked about in this interview, and it is an amazing book. Anybody who is doing transformation in their own life, anybody who is doing transformation with a client, you need to have a copy of this book. I love it. It is great. If you have a topic you'd like to see us to cover in the future, please let me know. Some of the best interviews we've had have come from recommendations from people just like you. Last week, the interview we had with Carrie Conte came exactly from that. I would love to hear topics. I would love to hear recommendations for guests. Anything that you would like to hear, please let me know. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com is the easiest way to get me. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. Or if you're on the website, just click on that contact link up above. You can leave me a voice memo, or you can leave me an email. Also, if you've downloaded the app, You can always contact me directly from inside of the app. Just hit contact. You can leave me a voice memo in the app. You can send me an email from the app. The app is absolutely free, gives you access to all of the content from the website, plus some free bonuses that are just in the app. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.